Hey friends, it's Jasmine from Jasmine's Astrology, but you can call me Jay. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be chatting about the full moon in Gemini, our final full moon of 2024, and it's happening on December 15th at around 4:01 a.m. Eastern at 23 degrees of Gemini. I wanted to share a little bit of personal insight before we fully dive into the video. When I write these forecasts, there's a particular format. There's a method to my madness that I follow with every forecast, and it kind of starts with looking at the chart of whatever I'm going to be talking about, taking a lot of just sort of random notes from my initial and like first impressions of what I'm looking at. And then I gather more data and details and take more notes. And then I take all of that and try to put it together into something cohesive that I can then come and share with all of you, something that hopefully makes sense to people. But I couldn't get this forecast past the data gathering and like random note stage for so much longer than it usually takes me. It was just sort of like at this moment, like stalled a little bit. I was very like in my head about it. I was really wrapped up mentally thinking about this full moon and everything that I could talk about, but I couldn't seem to get pen to paper, or I suppose in this case, like fingers to keys. Like I just couldn't get the words out. And Mercury was very much still retrograde as I was writing this. It's retrograde as I'm filming this. So I'm sure there will be a few flubs. And then as I was in like that data gathering stage, Mars was just about to station retrograde. So the energy of like delays and slowing down was certainly in the air. But I also feel there was like something about this full moon that I was invoking in the process of trying to write about it. And that's not necessarily to say that this full moon is going to be about stalled progress or delays. I actually think it might bring the opposite because at the time of the full moon, Mercury is very close to stationing direct. And so, as far as delays in the Mercury sense go, and the influence that it's been having on our Sagittarius house, the influence that it always has on the Gemini and Virgo house topics, I think we're about to turn things around in that area, just given Mercury's, impending change of direction. But, a stationing planet takes time to kind of get its feet back under it and get moving. So it might be a full moon that's like not full speed ahead or anything like that. It might just take a little bit of time to get moving. There's definitely some fogginess and uncertainty infused into this full moon, and that's thanks to a square from Neptune, which might potentially make the path ahead sort of like temporarily obscured just for a couple of days, maybe. I think the full moon absolutely invites us to practice patience, which is what I was learning as I was like waiting for the thoughts to come from here actually onto the page. And there's definitely a sense of like being ready to look ahead, being ready to move forward, but needing our body to catch up with our mind, or maybe our mind to catch up with our body, maybe something external to catch up with something internal, or vice versa, something along those lines. And that catching up quality, that need for patience, is coming from the fact that Mercury is stationing direct on the same day as the full moon. And of course, as the host planet of Gemini, as the planet responsible for the goings on in the sign of Gemini, Mercury has a significant influence on this full moon. And with Mercury in station, it's stationary. It's not moving. It's preparing to redirect and reorient itself so that it can move forward once again. But it's currently stationing at 6 degrees of Sagittarius, and it's going to be at that same degree until December 18th. And so that's only a few days after the full moon, but nevertheless, there is this signature around the lunation of like, okay, very soon, but not quite yet. But something definitely feels like it's shifting. Maybe it's a perspective, maybe it's a routine. Something is, or at least has the potential to change direction. Like this is a moment of being able to switch things up and try a different approach. And maybe, probably, it is in relation to something that was up for review during the retrograde period. And having gone through that, now we have a clearer understanding around it. But again, we might be waiting for some other factor to catch up to us so that we can continue on. Or maybe we have to do some catching up to something so that we can continue on. So again, we're going to need some patience. We're going to need to remember the bigger picture. We might be really excited about an idea or a communication or a plan that is coming into full view, especially with the help of that beautiful light and illumination of this full moon. But we just might want to proceed with a bit of caution. There's just really no rush. And in a few days, all of these ideas and these conversations might provide further helpful information, or we might get some kind of better result from the projects that we're ready to put back into motion. Now, it's not necessarily going to be easy to take it easy, to remember that there's just no rush, because a Gemini full moon is typically very stimulating to the mind, to the nervous system. We have the moon at its peak point of light in the cycle, which can represent an increase in energy levels, an increase in emotions, and the environment that it is bringing all of that heightened energy to is Gemini. And Gemini is a place of curiosity and conversation and networking and the sharing of information and ideas. It's a place of social interaction and movement and multitasking and variety. And it's interesting because the Gemini full moon typically takes place at a time of the year when a lot of people are going to holiday parties and big gatherings, and the energy here is certainly conducive for small talk and chit chat, or even like an all night conversation. Gemini full moons can be really stimulating and kind of like keep us awake. In another direction, it can often be about like learning or just feeling inquisitive and spending the time while the moon is in Gemini digging into something or digging into a lot of things more likely. And this full moon could still be any or all of that. I think some kind of movement, some kind of social interaction is definitely on the table, but perhaps in a way that's a little more measured than Gemini full moons of the past. We might just need to pace ourselves. Again, Mercury is tired right now, and it is not able to provide as much support as it would like to for all of these Gemini happenings. Of course, we can still work with all of this lovely Gemini energy that is on offer, but perhaps in a more streamlined fashion. So, instead of talking to everybody at the party, we might talk to a small handful of people. If you're in the mood to read, maybe we read a book as opposed to, various articles. Like we stick to one thing. We might want to put some limits around scrolling social media, watching more long form content than a lot of like short form content. These are very Gemini things, like reading a lot of articles, watching short form content. But I feel like trying to elongate the focus might be really helpful for that feeling of overstimulation. So if we're in a gaming mood, maybe playing a game like cards or a board game or something that will last a little bit longer, like even just like 30 minutes therein. And again, so that's like elongating the focus, but we're also engaging the mind and the hands with cards and board games. And the hands and the mind are very Gemini things. And if we're in the mood to learn something, it might be helpful to revisit a topic that we're somewhat familiar with, so that, the brain is still stimulated during that learning process, but we're not getting this like total information dump that might just kind of wash over us or add to that feeling of overstimulation. And of course, journaling is always a great way to move ideas and information out of our head and into something else, like get it out of the body, and then it is somewhere where we can always come back to it later. I always say when there's like a lot of Mercury energy in the mix, a lot of Gemini energy in the mix, we want to make sure we're writing things down, taking note of things so that we can come back to it later because they can flit away so quickly. And some of them are gems that we want to hang on to. And then we can come back to them when we have like that greater capacity to kind of take it all in. And yeah, I don't know. These are just some kind of basic ideas. They might not be for everybody. They're just suggestions. Hopefully, one or two of them will be helpful. I mean, some of us might need a much bigger break from the more logical data processing sides of our brain. This full moon, as I mentioned, is in a square with Neptune, which brings some foggy, hazy, sleepy, and potentially a little confusing type of energy to the mix. But when there's a strong influence from Neptune, it can be helpful to kind of let go of timelines and schedules and sort of surrender to something with a little bit less or a lot less linear structure. So we might turn that Gemini curiosity towards creative practices. Like maybe it's a perfect night for crafts with a friend. Maybe we can even learn a new craft or learn a new technique in a craft that we already enjoy. Maybe our full moon looks like connecting with people via those creative activities. Or given that Mercury is just about to be stationing direct, like maybe we are reconnecting, because we're still kind of in that phase of retrograde during the full moon. So maybe we're reconnecting with somebody over a shared interest or reconnecting to that hobby or that craft. That hobby or that craft itself. And if you're musically inclined and have friends that are as well, it might be a really fun night to just collaborate in that way with friends. But even listening to music with a couple of friends or watching a film or a TV show that might get you like really chatty afterwards, that could be really fun, sparking some conversation. And Neptune can also be really supportive of spiritual endeavors. So maybe we find interaction with others by getting together for some sort of full moon ritual. Or maybe we're really called towards that journaling, sort of turning all of that curiosity inwards, maybe pulling some tarot cards or doing some other kind of divination and kind of like sparking a conversation within ourselves. So this full moon is definitely going to have some of us feeling overstimulated and overtired, maybe a little frenetic, a little frayed. And if that's the case, then those like more soothing Neptunian activities might be really helpful to lean into at this time. Some of us will be feeling totally energetic and lively. Maybe we'll have a mix of both as the moon transits through Gemini this month, which will actually start on December 13th and then run through until the like mid-afternoon of the 15th. But all of us definitely get the benefit of that full moon illumination and insight. There's definitely something here about having like a clarity of vision, especially surrounding the Sagittarius, Gemini, and Virgo house topics. So I think we do want to stay open to the ideas coming through. Like I said, having that notebook handy or the notes app on the phone handy. So staying open to the ideas coming through and to the curiosities that are piquing our interest. And, that Neptune square might make it easy to want to numb ourselves. That can be sort of the other side of Neptune, is that we want to cut ourselves off. We don't want to feel the things anymore. So we numb ourselves to the stimulation and to all the input. And while I do think it'll be helpful to be discerning about the amount of input that we are sort of allowing ourselves to receive, I don't think we want to completely cut ourselves off either. Like, this isn't a full moon for solitude. We don't want to numb ourselves with like too much information either. Like, we don't want to be doing 13 different things to try to figure it all out, but we could do like 3 and then still maintain that Gemini need for variety and curiosity. Just a couple days before the full moon, Mercury was in a sextile with Venus, which is a super cute, super sweet, super encouraging little conversation between the two planets. And Venus was kind of offering Mercury and all of our Mercury stuff a little friendly boost of like, hey, pal, you got this. No worries. And as Mercury begins to move forward once more, it's going to be heading towards an opposition with Jupiter, which can definitely speak to overdoing it or doing something in excess, like going overboard. But it's also incredibly uplifting, incredibly hopeful. It works to expand our point of view and helps to show us kind of the greatest possible outcomes, like the best case scenarios, which kind of then gives us a little bit of confidence to like say yes to opportunities and like put ourselves out there. And so the point being is that like at the time of this full moon and as Mercury is like getting its feet back under it and to be able to keep moving again, it's like it's between these two really nice energies. And so I think if anything, we can absolutely find support from friends and social gatherings and interacting with others at this time. And, there might even be something to the idea of like bringing groups or friends together, like helping connect one person to another because their shared interest might be beneficial, like, might be sort of symbiotic in a way, something like that. But ultimately, I think we want to focus on making connections and being part of social interactions and conversing in ways that feel meaningful beyond the present moment. Okay, that's all I've got for this week. It still felt a little jumbled as it was coming out, so hopefully it was clear and concise and helpful. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or if you need clarifications, and let me know where Gemini is in your chart. Are you looking forward to the full moon? Do you have plans for the full moon? Are you moving towards the Neptunian activities? Are you going to be out and like super socializing? What are you up to? I'd love to hear about it. And thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, if it was helpful, please take a moment to like it and subscribe to my channel. It is a super helpful and super free way of supporting my work, and I'm super grateful. And I will be back soon with other cosmic insights and more astrology chit chat. Everything's jumbled. Mercury retrograde. Okay. I'll be back soon with other astrology insights and more cosmic chit chat. Whatever. Until then, everyone, I'll catch you in the cosmos.